Hi everyone, welcome back to another patch notes review here. This time around, of course, we're going to be going through patch notes 0.73 because it's coming out today, pretty much in a couple of hours here. So this is the patch that we're going to be getting Irem. So of course, like I did last time, I'm going to leave the interpretation to Irem just kind of for later, although I might take a look at the kit this time around because it's not as complicated as Tazia just looking at the words from the looks of it. So let's give it a quick spin here and see how 0.73 is going to look like. Of course, as I said, Irem is going to be released here in 0.73. If you guys want to take a look at the introductory video, I'll have that link to the top right of the screen here, so make sure you guys go take a look at that. But other than that, let's take a look at some of her stats. Overall, it's not bad, right? It's pretty standard across the board here. She is also going to be a throw character as well from the looks of it. So pretty interesting in that regards. And as I mentioned before as well, she has two different sets of skills that you're going to be having to kind of micromanage between the two, with the transformation skill as most likely her ultimate. So you'll have to figure that out as well. Going down into Catitude, it says when Irem enters a different area, her vision range increases throughout the course of the day. Um, Interesting. After staying in the same area for 15 seconds instead of vision range, her other abilities are enhanced. So that's kind of cool, where you're going to get additional cooldown reduction, and as the cat, you're going to get additional defense. So pretty interesting there. Eating food made with fish immediately recovers her HP for 10% of the max food HP regen. So I guess if you're talking about stuff like fish and chips, then you'll be able to recover a solid amount of health the moment you eat it. It's pretty similar to what Rozzy does with the chocolate system, I guess, but it's a little bit more of an instantaneous heal, which is pretty solid, especially when you're in cat form from the looks of it, because you do get the defense increase. Bouncy ball, this is Irem's Q. She throws a bouncy ball and it does damage. Cool things there. It bounces 2 times from the looks of it, right? One, two, oh, actually, it's technically 3 times if you want to count it like that. Cooldown pretty low, and there are damage increases from the looks of it as well. So pretty cool things there. And I do see a little effect at the end of it as well. So you do get a little bit of an effect if you do end up hitting somebody. So cool, cool, cool. When you're in Irem, your W will create a little bit of a field that slows enemies after a second of channeling the skill. And the enemies hit by the damage are also charmed. So, pretty interesting about that one. Hopefully, this 13-second cooldown is not going to be that big of an issue, because that is a very short cooldown, especially for a skill that charms somebody for a whole second, essentially. It's basically a bigger AoE version of Heart Charm, which is really hard to dodge in and of itself if you're trying to fight into her, and this looks even worse to try to fight up against into. So I might expect a little bit of cooldown nerfs coming onto Irem's W down the road. Hopefully it does end up happening, because 13 seconds, it seems a little bit too short for that, especially with all the CDR reduction and cap items that exist in the game. That seems a bit rough. Love Jump, just a quick hop. Cool. Lisa Fishmark at her original spot, sick. Pet Me is the one where she's going to be using as her ultimate here. Fishmark, created with Bouncy Ball or her Love Jump, her next auto attack, has increased range, and leaves a cat bell mark that lasts for 4 seconds. Target with a cat bell mark shares their vision to Irem. So effectively just more or less as a camera, as long as you can get the cat bell mark down on the ground. They last for 10 seconds for the fish marks, and you can create up to 2. Range increase is of 1.5 meters. Okay, that's that's pretty big. And also using the skill will also transform you into the cat. Cooldown of 1.5 seconds, not affected by the item cooldown reduction, and that's okay, because 1.5 seconds is pretty short, and of course, since it's going to be that transformation skill, it's not going to have an SP cost. When you're on your cat, basically uppercut from the looks of it, the glove weapon skill, which is, I guess, kinda cool. If you attack a target with a cat bell mark, the enemy is stunned for 0.75 seconds. That's pretty rough. And then afterwards, you do get additional damage, kind of like how Piolo's Q works from the looks of it, so that's kind of cool there too. affected by crowd control, you do extra skill damage. So as long as a big part of Cat Punch is probably going to be the fact that you have to land the cat bell mark onto somebody and then use it for the additional skill damage. It seems kind of strong. She already seems to have a lot of crowd control in her kit to begin with, so I'm a little bit scared about that one. The cooldown on the skill is also very low as well. Issy Fit, she spins into the air and then just kind of slams down onto the ground, dealing skill damage and knocking up enemies airborne for a whole second. That is a ridiculous amount of hard crowd control on this character. The damage itself, I'm not really too worried about. It doesn't seem like it's that big of an issue. Maybe it might be. I have no clue about that. But the sheer amount of crowd control that Irem has is actually a little bit, troublesome just from looking at it right now. She also has a leap on her cat, and I do wonder if she does jump over walls with this. Doesn't look like it can because it is a pretty short hop, but leaping towards a fish mark will also increase the jump distance. So interesting. Of course, this will also have a part where if you're a cat, moving to a fish mark as a cat gives you a shield that absorbs a really healthy amount of health with additional skill amp scaling. Oh my god, she actually looks kind of overloaded, in my opinion, just looking at this. She has a ton of crowd control. Her damage numbers don't even seem that bad. And the fact that her regular humanoid form and her feline form plays off of one another really, really well feels like it's so difficult for a lot of characters to really deal with Irem if her main purpose is to either run away or just continue to lock you down in one single spot. So I definitely would not be surprised if I saw, Irem getting nerfed maybe in the next couple of hotfixes if it does end up happening. If her damage is low though, just, of course looking at the numbers, it's not really going to give me any answers to that until we physically see it in game. I think the sheer amount of crowd control might genuinely be an issue for fighting up against Irem, and that's going to be a little bit annoying. Isaac skin releasing here. We are going to also have a Tazia skin releasing here as well. A couple of the Mai stuff, and we also have just for you guys as well, the Mai, of course, if you do get gold or above in Season 7, you do get that Cadet Mai skin. So on top of all these emotes, as well as the skin pack, if you do not have this Mai skin already, you will be getting that Cadet Mai skin coming out very soon as well, as long as you have that rank requirement. Continue to go down. Camillo having Rapier now as a weapon is going to be pretty interesting. So not only will he have access to dual swords, he'll also have access to Rapier. And this was also teased a little bit in, I believe it was a YouTube short over on the Eternal Return channel. So make sure you guys also go check that out if you guys are interested in seeing that video as well. Rapier Mastery level, you do get additional crit damage. That is an immense amount of crit damage early on as well. Goodness gracious. A lot of basic attack amp as well as skill amplification, although this probably won't be that big of an issue because even with Rapier, there aren't that many options that Camillo most likely has going into amp because a lot of his damage is really based off of doing basic attack skills, going back and forth, so pretty interesting there. A lot of kind of control, balancing on different modes, doesn't really matter. A couple of extra voice lines for Sylvia, interesting. More game tips, more analysis. Ooh, pretty cool. They're going to be adding more things to the end of this, which is really nice because I've always wanted more information towards the end of the game, so that's going to be sick. More Cobalt Protocol information being added. Multiple spray equips. Okay, cool. Patch change thought processes and direction. Let's take a look at this real fast. Crimson Bow offers a non-VF blood sample upgrade for basic attack bow users, so it's something compared to the Fail Not. They'll actually have something additional on top of it instead of a completely blood sample upgrade. Purple Monarch is going to be the spell and dual sword choice. So other than dual sword, should be the Asura. And you have a different option now, which is not bad. Although I will say a lot of the characters that use dual swords nowadays didn't really opt to use Asura to begin with. Even Kathy, I believe, decided to use something else instead of that weapon. So maybe Purple Monarch will be the one changing that up a little bit here. Getting your Hyperloop cancelled repeatedly early on. We don't want the experience as there's a fun aspect to it, so we're going to be approaching it in 2 different steps. Crowd controlling will not stop Hyperloops on day 1. That is super sick. Goodbye to all the Yans. Goodbye to all the Hyuns continuing to ruin people's days on day 1 Hyperloop. So that's going to be sick. Hyperloops cannot be cancelled until night number 1. So as soon as night hits, then you'll be able to start doing that even more. So Tazia is the main reason why they did this, but KR has a lot of issues with Hyuns doing it quite often. Of course, Yans are also an issue with that as well. So interesting there. They're going to revert her last hotfix adjustment, which was basically increasing her SP cost for Spada. In patch 0.74, crowd control will stop the Hyperloops, but will grant immunity to Hyperloop cancellations for a short period of time afterward. So they're mixing it up a little bit back and forth until they implement the full fix, which is going to be coming out in the next patch. Character price reductions, more Nadine nerfs coming through, especially for Bo this time around. That's been pretty strong, I think, if I'm going to be honest with you. There's been a lot of crit-style Bo Nadines running Adrenaline, so I think this nerf is definitely something that has been required for quite a bit, so a pretty decent time that that's coming through. More Nathapon nerfs coming through, which is completely fine as well. Still has been doing quite a lot of damage, especially with time-lapse. But, you're going to be maxing the skill second, most likely as Nathapon, so I don't think this early stage is going to be too big of an issue for the most of the time that Nathapon wants to run around. Where, of course, his big damage comes in the super early game, where each of the ticks coming from the last photographs here, not that big of a deal, because a lot of damage that you do is overwhelming the other person, which Nathapon was already doing perfectly fine on. So here is completely okay as well. A bit of a buff to Nikki, which I still have kind of faults about, but okay. We'll just keep moving there. More damage nerfs onto Tia, although it's a bit more of a swap up, right? Because as you can see here, for Brushstroke, they lowered the base damage, but they gave a bit more skill amplification, which means towards the latter stage of the game, she'll have a lot more damage, and it fits with exactly what they wrote here. We've adjusted Tia's early game damage by lowering her base damage to address her high average kill rate in the early game, but then compensated it by giving a little bit more of an amplification purpose, allowing her to score more kills maybe in the latter stages of the game, where you do have a lot more amp than maybe the 15 base damage that got cut throughout quite a decent chunk of Brushstroke. And I think that's okay. Laura, let's see here. A bit of a nerf here again as well. Even more nerfs onto the skill amp. So Thorn Lilac itself will not be just continuously bursting people down in the early stages of the game. Or, for that matter, overall. Will it be enough to kind of stop Laura? I actually think so. Laura has been having a relatively tough time nowadays. Unless you're really good at this character, you already are at the point where you can't see the fullest extent of Laura's power, and this will probably limit it even further, since having to rely even more on the amplification numbers, that's going to make it really tough for Laura to start assassinating people, which is what she really loves to do. Continuing on, Razi is going to be getting a little bit of a defense buff there. Luke going to be getting, let's see, quite a nerf on a couple of things here. Let's see, loss in attack power in the clean sweep, but a bit of a buff on the skill amp part of clean sweep. So I guess compensating a bit more for last patch, where we saw Luke losing a lot of amplification damage. So lowering the Luke's attack power as he is cleaning up the island with both Vajra and Mallet, but to compensate, they're going to be making up for the skill amp builds. So sick. They're backtracking a little bit on the previous patch, and then just coming back with a bit more of a skill amp purpose here, and that's pretty solid. Marcus getting a bit of an HP buff. 30 HP is actually kind of huge, I will definitely say there. But it is still Marcus, right? He's been seeing a lot less play, especially in solos. He is still pretty good, but he really needs to snowball if he wants to get anything done. And in a meta like now, where snowballing is very difficult to do if you're not continuously contesting objectives, this is okay, but not something that'll be massively an issue. Maybe outside of solos. Maybe maybe 4 solos. Outside of solos, I don't know, because outside of solos, Marcus is kind of rough to deal with, but in solos, that'll be okay. Magnus also getting a little bit of an additional attack power scaling early on. Bianca getting a little bit nerfed there, which is pretty big. She still can burst people really, really, really fast. And the point in which Bianca really does a lot of damage is when she reaches level 16 as the character, when she gets her access to weapon level 3, not weapon level, sorry, her ultimate level 3. By that point, you're going to be somewhere around weapon level 14, 13, maybe 15 if you've been doing pretty consistently well. That is a lot of skill amp lost throughout the course of the game, especially when you're getting a whole 0.4 reduced as well. So a pretty big nerf coming to Bianca in the latter stages of the game. Falconry, which is the thing that allows Bernice to move faster when moving the targets that are marked, going to be getting a bit of an earlier buff here for cooldown, and this is pretty huge. You don't max Falconry until quite a bit later. I don't even know if you do max Falconry right now second, because I do know that they did recently buff the traps. So I guess you could just put like 1 or 2 points in and then max Falconry. So this is still pretty big, at least in the early stages of the game when Bernice wants to snowball. So pretty big buff for him there. Shukai getting a little bit buff here too. He's been buffed and nerfed, and I guess he's been getting buffed again here as well. So just a bit of more skill mastery level for Spear for skill amp, going over to Shukai in 0.73. Sua having a low win rate, so they're buffing her ultimate cooldown. No? Let's, Interesting. That's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of people. This feels very, very unnecessary for Sua, if I'm going to be completely honest here. But that's a little bit of a personal bias. I'll just move on. Sylvia is going to be getting a little bit of a base damage nerf here in the earlier stages, especially with the front flip. Nimble Neuron has been trying to control Sylvia, I think, in the past couple of patches. They've been trying to tune down her early game assassination skills, which definitely makes sense because that's not what Nimble Neuron really thought up of when they thought of Sylvia. So they're going to be lowering her early game damage quite a lot here as well. A whole 30 base damage at level 1 for front flip, and you don't even max this skill for quite a while as well, since second skill that you start putting point into, I believe, is the spare tire, which is her E. Which means front flip on the bike is going to be doing way less damage in the early stages of the game, almost until she starts hitting that point where she will start putting points into her third skill. So pretty big nerf here to Sylvia throughout the game. Aya also going to be getting a little bit of a nerf in the pistol mastery level. KR loves to play pistol Aya, which is probably the reason why we are seeing this here. Isaac, let's see, if the cast destination is a blocked off area, the landing destination will be determined as the further side of the terrain. So you can technically jump walls with his ultimate is essentially what this is. A bit better than before. Alex nerfs coming through. I feel bad for Subak right now because he won IEF. Did really well as Alex, and now Alex is getting nerfed a little bit here. So quite a bit of an unfortunate situation, I will definitely say. So a little bit more squishier is going to be Alex, a lot less movement speed when he enters into his passive by using his ranged E or his melee. So brutal change there for Alex. From head to toe, gets an additional attack range. Why? What is happening here? A buff to Yuki as well as Sua, two very easy characters to already chain your skills back to back, assuming you are able to get on top of somebody, which they definitely have the utility to. And they're making it even better. I don't know about this change. I genuinely don't think it's a good idea, especially because Yuki, especially dual sword Yuki as well, running in North America, and even some over in KR as well. They are so difficult to deal with. Diamond Shard still an issue. Crit on the Q still an issue. And now this on top of it as well. It's going to be really hard running away from Yuki in a lot of cases. Next up, two-handed sword Jackie. Yeah, pretty alright nowadays. I feel like KR really loves running two-handed sword Jackie to begin with. And they've been doing pretty well, especially with the Aurora Longsword. So they're going to be tuning that down a little bit here. Camillo also going to be getting a massive attack speed buff onto the dual sword mastery level. Wow, that is absolutely insane. 0.4% attack speed per mastery level. That is insane. Kathy is going to be getting a little bit buffed here over on the amplification scaling side, but a bit less damage on the edge damage as well. So I guess this hurts a little bit more on the dagger Kathy side, more so than dual swords, since they're not really getting compensated for it at all. And that the purpose is it right here, right? High win rate when she's using dagger, so she's going to be getting a bit heavily nerfed over on the dagger side with 0 compensation to make up for it. Tazia, early damage lowered a little bit, but reverting the stamina gate that we put on spot. Okay, so they're just going to be lowering her damage overall. And the overly high win rate, I think, is relatively understated there, because fighting up against a couple of Tazia players, especially on the international side nowadays, in 0.72, I feel like they've been able to figure out that character very, very well. When you're fighting up against Tazia, if you really want to try killing her, it kind of feels like you're fighting inside of a cage with a lot of the cards stacked towards the Tazia's favor, because she's able to control the area around her so very well that it's so tough to jump on top of her and be able to dish out the damage that you want to do. And she has a lot of shield coming out of her dashes as well. So I definitely think that the damage nerfs here a bit needed. Although it's pretty small enough to the point maybe it won't be too big of a noticeable thing. Maybe the genuine Tazia players who's been used to this will feel it a lot harder than the other players who have to fight into it. Fiora also getting a bit of a buff here as well. Fenty, right, on the outer ring, will be able to get a bit of additional damage here for both the base as well as the skill amp. And for Haze, you're going to be getting another buff. Okay, the center Q damage will be doing quite a lot, so the grenade launcher is going to be doing a lot more damage in the center part. Okay, alright. Interesting, another buff to Haze. Let's take a look at this one. Buff to Dual Sword Rampage from the looks of it here. The first hit as well as the second one also going to be getting buffed. New epic weapon, the Black Butterfly, is the additional build up, I believe, into the second one, right? No. Is it? Black Butterfly. Was it called Black Butterfly up at the top of the patch notes? I can't remember where it was. Crimson Bow. Purple Monarch. Okay, so it isn't. Alright, so the name definitely isn't consistent, but it is this thing right there. Purple Monarch up top is effectively what? Let's see. Black Butterfly is, right? So Purple Monarch, Black Butterfly, very close, very close. It's going to have 30 attack power, 40 skill amp. This is also another one of those skill amp per level weapons. And it also has Hex on top of it. So a weapon that is meant to allow you to transition, of course, from Black Butterfly up into Ligor and Zar a bit more consistently seems to be what the purpose of Black Butterfly is. And we'll see how it goes. We will definitely see how it goes. Two-handed sword or a longsword gonna be nerfed here, which not very surprised by whatsoever, because again, KR really loves to use two-handed sword, especially on Jackie, and Aurora Longsword has been a very strong contender, as it is just about the only transition weapon on two-handed sword that allows you to start snowballing from the very early stages in the game, whereas a lot of the other two-handed sword upgrades, like the Levitine or even like the Dainsleif, you tend to see a lot of those kind of go towards the Fioras or even the Yukis that doesn't really care too much about the early game snowballing. So the Aurora Longsword here will get nerfed a little bit. Rain of Arrows, of course, going to be changed a little bit more. What is this? Oh, so it changes the colors a little bit more. So if an enemy uses it and when an ally uses it, the colors will be a little bit different. Stallion Bow, gonna... okay, interesting. Stallion Bow doesn't really matter too much because that's not a fully built weapon. Ancient Bolt will here instead be getting attack speed and vigor instead of the basic attack amplification per level. So, Nimble Neuron putting vigor on quite a lot of things nowadays. Now, putting it on Ancient Bolt, I think this definitely helps Nadine's 100% because they make full use of adrenaline nowadays, especially if they are running crit. Although Jeeves is still really, really good on Nadine, especially with the routing being amazing too. So I don't know if Ancient Bolt is genuinely going to pop off here, but a pretty solid change to Ancient Bolt nonetheless. I would not be surprised to see characters even like Rio start running Vigor just thanks to the fact that Ancient Bolt seems to have that, unique passive now. And they're also going to be adding it to the Crimson Bow, which is going to be upgrading from a true Somnifier, just a bit of better stats compared to, of course, the Ancient Bolt, and then the unique passive of Vigor on top of it as well. You do more damage, of course, with the additional attacks compared to the Ancient Bolt, and your attack speed stacking will also be a little bit better. The amount of attack power that you gain is still consistent, but the additional movement speed that you gain out of Crimson Bow is going to be a lot better, actually double the amount that you get from the Vigor out of the Ancient Bow. So a very massive upgrade for bow users coming out from the Crimson Bow. This is going to be a bit problematic, but we'll see how that goes in 0.73. Burgundy getting a little bit nerfed there on the defensive side. Holy Orders getting a little bit nerfed here too. Persona will get a slight nerf on the amp. Blood Ripper is actually going to get nerfed. One thing I will mention about Blood Ripper, I've been kind of thinking about this for the past a couple of weeks after I saw the stats on Blood Ripper. I don't really know if Blood Ripper is entirely better than Sheath of Shah Jahan. Sheath of Shah Jahan already has 9% armor penetration as well as a solid amount of additional max HP and a really, really high amount of base attack power. Now, Blood Ripper has 10% armor penetration, has 25% attack speed, and okay amounts of attack power and defense, but the problem is Blood Ripper costs a VF blood sample, Sheath of Shah Jahan costs 0 transition items. So the difference between Blood Ripper and Sheath of Shah Jahan, I'm still in the middle of trying to figure out which one is better when it comes down to it. We'll see how that goes. Of course, Blood Ripper also has healing reduction, which is quite important on a lot of characters that can run Sheath of Shah Jahan, so maybe in the end, who knows? Who the heck knows? Red Shoe is going to be changed up a little bit here to be a bit more sustainable, more so than dealing damage, so interesting change there. Just losing a little bit of a stat and making up for it on another stat that it has. Necronomicon will lose a little bit of amp very similarly to Persona, and Sanguine Gumbai will also get a bit of a nerf here as well. Consumables, new event food, Snowflake. It's going to be additional SP. Additionally obtainable at a certain chance from wild animals or air supply boxes, and you can use them in a event that's going to be coming out right there. Traps and cameras. Effects of the traps are going to be unchanged. Included traps, yada yada yada. Let's see, what did it actually change? Explosive impact. Oh, so it's just more of the graphics. Cool. Sentinel for Augment is going to be buffed for Cobalt Protocol, and it seems like a bunch of mode balancing. So, overall, 0.73 is a little bit confusing for me, right? Introduction of Irem already from the beginning felt a bit overdone. She has a ton of crowd control. Her mobility doesn't seem as bad as a lot of people thought it was going to be because they were comparing it to another character called Nadine in League of Legends. This is, sorry, not Nadine. Oh my goodness. Nidalee, there we go. That's the character from League of Legends. She does not have as much mobility as Nidalee. There is no way. It doesn't even look close to that character, but definitely has a lot of crowd control on top of the fact that she has a decent amount of safety because those hard crowd controls pretty easy to land, especially when people are running into you, and you're going to be able to pick up, of course, the cat bells, as well as just continuously landing that tail swiping thingy with the cat that knocks people up. It's going to be very hard, I think, to kill this character. And then a couple of changes in this patch as well. Of course, I'm thinking about like Yuki as well as the Sua changes. A bit confusing in my books. Very unnecessary, in my opinion. Although there were some other changes that were okay for the most part. So if I'm going to be honest to you guys and have to give a rating here out of 10 for 0.73, I think a 5 is most likely what I would give it. Maybe a borderline 6 if I really want to be a bit more nicer about this patch as well. But in the end, this is the patch before we're going to start going into the next season for Preseason 8. And once we start going into patches 0.74 and 0.75, we'll see a lot of change-ups coming into Eternal Return. So I'm not too entirely worried about 0.73 right now, although the next couple of weeks for playing Eternal Return, fighting up against Yuki's as well as Sua's, who have already been pretty popular in the international regions. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same in the Korean regions as well. It's going to be a lot tougher fighting them unless the hotfix comes through and fixes those two characters. Of course, there are some other problematic characters that I also talked about, or also some additional characters that maybe got what they really needed in this patch as well. But overall, that is what 0.73 is going to be, guys. Thank you so much for watching here, and I'll be back with another video hopefully very soon for you guys. But let me know down in the comments below what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.